example. And can we both agree that you shouldn't roll back the chain? Isn't that the whole idea here?
Philosophically, I think both of us are in favor of not rolling back the chain, and you and I think that that's kind of the whole point, is not rolling back the chain and having an immutable ledger. But obviously a huge group of people disagreed with us, and they rolled back the chain, and then the current version of Ethereum was born from that. So you and I agree on that point, but lots of others disagree, and we're perfectly willing to roll back the chain. And
you know, it's all fun and games when you roll back the chain for you, but when the government makes you roll back the chain, you wish you didn't have the power. You know, there's a reason Satoshi stepped back, and there's a reason Gavin stepped back. And it's because having the control to make changes comes with risk. Because someone, a not nice person, will put a gun to your head and say, you know what? I want to double spend this exchange transaction, and you're going to help. And that's the reason we need real distribution of parties, is for censorship resistance. Because if Bitcoin doesn't have censorship resistance, what does it have? A very expensive database. That's it.
We agree again.
All right. So, all right. We believe in not rolling back the chain. We believe in privacy. We believe in security. Let's go into...
I'd love to hear you address my argument in regards to that we have the empirical evidence and a giant track record of what works and has worked incredibly well to grow Bitcoin versus going off on this theory.
Yep. You could both be right, and there's a timing problem. You're both right, and there's a timing problem. You could probably increase the blocks to 2 to 4 to 20. You'd have more orphans. You'd have more centralization. There'd be more power in China. Large blocks are the reason we have empty blocks, unless you know something I don't. Empty blocks come from spy mining. When you spy on other mining pools, as though you're a miner for them, but really you're your own mining network. And then you get the data a little bit faster, and you start mining on the data that the pool gave you. But in actuality, you're going to release that block on your own and hope it outcompetes the one that they're working on. But it helps you to outcompete that by not including transactions in yours. So the reason that we have literal denial of service attacks in Bitcoin, literal 10-minute periods where no transactions can occur, is because of centralization. And that centralization gets worse the larger the blocks get, because the more profitable it is to be geographically and systematically commingled. So pools have done more to destroy the distribution of censorship resistance in Bitcoin than anything else. Because when you mine for a pool, you don't run a node. You are the bitch of the actual pool that runs a node, and they decide what the consensus rules are. And now you have no control, no say. You don't get to choose your developers. You don't get to choose what blocks are okay with you. You don't get to choose what transactions are okay with you.
You do get to choose in the sense that you can choose which pool you want to mine on.
Right, but how many pools are there that you can mine on that give you a variance that actually win a block once in a while enough? You see? So
maybe a dozen or 20, somewhere in that ballpark.
Not enough for $70 billion of value.
Right. So I think the best way to have more pools is to have more Bitcoin users with a more vibrant ecosystem, and the more people that are participating in Bitcoin, the more pool operators there are going to be, the more miners there's going to be, the more everything there's going to be. And in the earliest days, at one point maybe there were 5 pools total, and now we have 15 or 20 pools total that have more than 1% of the global hash rate. And I think if the Bitcoin ecosystem as a whole is allowed to grow, we're going to see an even larger number of pools.
You got it backwards. You got it backwards. The maximum number of pools that ever existed was when everyone ran their own node and everyone mined CPUs and GPUs. That was the maximum that ever existed. And the more money and the more participants and the more value that we've had, the more centralization in China we've had. And you can't even negotiate with these guys. They're not on Twitter. They're not on Reddit. They're not interacting with me. They're not interacting with the core devs. They don't care to talk to you. They just care to run their mining software and have it auto flip from whatever chain is the most profitable. So even if you cared to negotiate with these guys, you'd also be having to negotiate with the logic of their auto flipping software, which is very risky for social consensus. Because let me tell you, if the government of China decides one way, these guys are going to decide that way too, or die. And do you want to risk the health of the Bitcoin network on the government of China? I don't.
I'm much, much, much more concerned about the government of the United States causing trouble for people. The government of the United States has already thrown lots more people in jail for doing Bitcoin things than the government of China has. So I think our biggest fear should be from the United States government, not the Chinese government. And just like the United States, there's lots and lots of people with lots of different points of view. China's an even bigger country with about 4 times as many people as the United States, with a whole bunch of different viewpoints living all over the place. So I don't think it's fair to group all of those people as if they're one monolithic entity. There's not. There's lots of people with very different views within China.
They're all behind the same firewall. They're all behind the same firewall. And that firewall introduces latency. And so the government does have control of an internet network there and the power. You need a lot of power to run a lot of miners, and they decide what gets power and what doesn't.
And there's some really, really interesting ways in which cryptocurrencies can be used to tear down that Great Firewall of China. And the Great Firewall of China is this, giant drag on the entire world's economy and slowing the entire world's rate of economic growth. And I'm looking forward to, myself and a number of other Bitcoiners or cryptocurrency enthusiasts using our technology to literally tear down the Great Firewall of China and make it obsolete. So that's, I'm hoping one thing that we can agree on as well would be good for the world.
Yeah, someone should put up satellites in the sky that beam the blockchain over the firewall, so it doesn't have to go through their control.
That would be nice.
Yeah,
I hear somebody might have been working on something like that.
Yeah, that's
Jeff Garzik Jeff Garzik several years was working on exactly that. And myself and Eric Voorhees and a number of others actually contributed some money towards that. And I hear another company much more recently was involved in that sort of thing as well.
Yeah, it's important that even if you don't like them, you give them credit. They got it done. It works great, and it's a great asset to the ecosystem. So, I mean, I'm going to call out the Blockstream guys for doing great work and not launching vaporware and not talking, but launching and having a usable thing that real people are doing real transactions on right now. The core team did that.
Are people using it for transactions?
Well, not a ton because it just came out, but anyone that wants to can. There are transactions that have been done on it. You go on Twitter, it's cool. So basically, you can receive the whole blockchain over the satellite, and then you can SMS your private key out, and it's only like a few kilobyte. So you can use SMS to transmit. You can use blockchain to receive.
SMS the signed transaction out. I assume not your private key, hopefully.
Right. So. Exactly. Yeah. Sorry. What Roger said is accurate there. So you can literally use the blockchain and Bitcoin if the internet goes down anywhere in the world, like now. That's sweet. Good. Like that's amazing.
Until they block your SMS transactions, which governments
but then you just can encrypt that, right? And you can make it look like a cat picture using stenography. They're not going to block your cat pictures. So, the core team, they are the best at what they do. So, I mean, I guess I'm going to defend the core team here. Okay. Unless you want to talk about the bad. Yeah. So here's your options. We could talk about how bad the fork really is. We could talk about how good the core team is. We could talk about worshiping Satoshi and appeals to authority. We could talk about the community in RBTC. We could talk about your control over that community and becoming the next Themios, which is not very libertarian-like. We could talk about CSW and his fake computer.
Let's pick one.
You choose, man. They're all good for me, dude.
Sure. So
let's use the one that's best for the audience, I guess. I mean, like you and I just getting smarter is cool.
But we can see what people want to talk about? Or?
You're never going to want to read chat. Believe me. You're not going to want to read chat. Okay. It's just going to be not a good experience. So. Yeah.
Let's talk about, I think, deifying Satoshi and Satoshi's vision and this and that. It's not that Satoshi's God. It's that we have, 8 years of empirical evidence that his system worked and worked incredibly well to grow Bitcoin. Why wouldn't we follow on the same path that we know for sure worked to grow Bitcoin to become incredibly popular all over the world? Why wouldn't we continue on that same path?
So I think Satoshi's a sellout. And I think that he could burn his private keys now and not risk the future economy of the world with an unknown party holding 10% of it, who may have given those keys to his kid, and his kid might be the next Hitler. Or he may have gotten a mental illness and gotten wacky himself. Or he has some other socially dangerous beliefs, and he decides to use the 10% net worth that he holds of the planet and whatever you gave him with the BCC fork and the coming B2X fork and the airdrops from Byteball and Lumens. And this guy's accruing a lot of money, and he's a variable that we're unaware of that chose to get out of the game when no one else did, right? He could just burn his keys. He doesn't
Lumens
be here helping right now. Yeah, Lumens get airdrops. Yeah, I'm getting you rich, man. Get your Lumens, get your Byteballs. You're welcome, bro. I think I give you 1% on the Lumens. So, Satoshi could still be here if he was alive. He could still be guiding us. He could still be helping us. He could be renouncing his control of his keys, but